The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across our manicured lawn, painting the scene in hues of gold and amber. Sarah was in the garden, her laughter drifting through the open French doors, a sound that usually brought me a sense of calm. Today, however, it grated on me, a discordant note in the symphony of our seemingly perfect life. We'd built this life together, brick by brick, from the ground up. A beautiful home in a desirable neighborhood, 2 successful careers that afforded us comfortable luxuries, and a close-knit circle of friends who were more like family. Or so I thought. I watched her from the kitchen window, pruning the rose bushes with an effortless grace that always captivated me. Her blonde hair, usually tied back in a neat ponytail for work, cascaded down her shoulders in loose waves. She was wearing her favorite sundress, the one I bought her on our anniversary. A soft blue that made her eyes seem even brighter. Everything about her, from the gentle curve of her smile to the way she tilted her head when she was concentrating, was familiar, comforting. Or it had been until recently. A knot tightened in my stomach, a cold dread that had taken root a few weeks ago and refused to loosen its grip. It started subtly, an unease I couldn't quite place. Sarah seemed different, more distant, perhaps. Or maybe I was just imagining things, projecting my own anxieties onto her. We'd both been under a lot of stress at work lately. That was probably it. Just stress. I busied myself making a pot of coffee, the aroma filling the kitchen with its rich, dark scent. It was a ritual, a small comfort in the face of the growing unease that gnawed at me. As I poured the steaming liquid into my favorite mug, my gaze drifted back to Sarah. She was still laughing, but now Tom and Emily had joined her in the garden. They were our closest friends, practically inseparable since college. We'd shared countless dinners, holidays, and weekend getaways together. They were an extension of our family. Tom was leaning against the old oak tree, his hands shoved into his pockets, a relaxed smile on his face. Emily was perched on the edge of the stone patio, her legs crossed at the ankles, gesturing animatedly as she spoke. The 3 of them seemed so at ease, so comfortable in each other's company. A pang of something I couldn't quite define shot through me. It wasn't jealousy, not exactly. It was more like a feeling of being on the outside, looking in. Like I was watching a scene from a play I wasn't a part of. I took a sip of my coffee, the bitter taste doing little to dispel the unease that settled in my bones. Something was off. I could feel it in my gut, a deep, primal instinct telling me that something was terribly wrong. And as I watched my wife laughing with our closest friends in the golden light of the setting sun, I couldn't shake the feeling that my world, the world I thought I knew so well, was about to crumble. The unease lingered, a constant, low-humming thrum beneath the surface of our daily lives. I tried to dismiss it, to convince myself that I was overreacting, that the stress at work was making me paranoid. But the feeling persisted, growing stronger with each passing day. I started paying closer attention to Sarah, to Tom, and to Emily. Not in a suspicious way, or at least I tried to make it seem that way. I simply observed them, studied their interactions, searching for some clue, some flicker of something that would explain the gnawing feeling in my gut. It was subtle, almost imperceptible. A shared glance between Sarah and Tom that lasted a fraction too long. A whispered joke between Emily and Sarah that they didn't share with me. A casual touch on the arm that seemed a little too familiar. Individually, these moments were insignificant, easily explained away. But collectively, they painted a different picture. A picture that sent a chill down my spine. I started noticing other things too. Sarah's late-night phone calls, conducted in hushed whispers in the hallway. The way she seemed to avoid my gaze sometimes, her eyes darting away when I looked at her. The sudden change in her routine, her frequent girls' nights with Emily that always seemed to coincide with Tom having a late meeting at work. I tried to talk to Sarah about it, about the distance that had grown between us. But every time I broached the subject, she brushed it off, telling me I was being silly, that I was imagining things. She told me I was working too hard, that I needed to relax. Her words were reassuring, but her tone was dismissive, as if my concerns were nothing more than a nuisance. One evening, I came home from work to find Sarah, Tom, and Emily in the living room. They were laughing, their faces flushed with what I assumed was the afterglow of a pleasant evening. As I walked in, the laughter stopped abruptly, replaced by an awkward silence. They quickly composed themselves, but I saw a flicker of guilt, or perhaps surprise, in their eyes. It was fleeting, gone in an instant, but it was enough. Confirmed my worst fears. I excused myself, telling them I had a headache and needed to lie down. I went upstairs to our bedroom, the knot in my stomach tightening into a hard, painful ball. I sat on the edge of the bed, my mind racing, trying to make sense of everything. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together, forming a picture I didn't want to see. My wife, my best friends. They were betraying me. The thought was like a punch to the gut, leaving me breathless and reeling. I felt a wave of anger wash over me, hot and blinding. But beneath the anger, there was something else, something deeper and more painful. It was the feeling of being betrayed, of being deceived by the people I trusted most in the world. It was the feeling of my world, my carefully constructed world, crumbling around me. As I sat there in the darkness, the silence of the house amplifying the turmoil in my mind, I knew that everything had changed. I knew that I couldn't go back to the way things were. I knew that I had to find out the truth, no matter how much it hurt. And I knew, with a chilling certainty, that I would make them pay. The truth, when it came, was even more devastating than I could have imagined. It wasn't a single, explosive revelation, but a slow, agonizing drip feed of confirmations. It started with Sarah's phone. I knew it was wrong, a violation of her privacy, but I couldn't help myself. The suspicion was a gnawing beast, demanding to be fed. One night, while she was in the shower, I picked up her phone. It was unlocked, a careless oversight that seemed out of character for the usually meticulous Sarah. My heart pounded in my chest as I scrolled through her messages. At first, I found nothing out of the ordinary. Then I saw it. A message from Tom, a simple goodnight, followed by a string of emojis, a heart, a kiss, a winking face. My blood ran cold. I scrolled further, my stomach churning with each new discovery. There were more messages, more emojis, more thinly veiled innuendos. There were photos too, pictures of them together, laughing, hugging, their bodies pressed close. The intimacy of the images was like a knife twisting in my gut. It wasn't just a physical affair. It was an emotional one. They were sharing their lives, their thoughts, their feelings with each other, while I, her husband, was left in the dark. The betrayal was multifaceted, a complex web of deceit that extended beyond Sarah and Tom. Emily was involved too. There were messages between her and Sarah, discussing Tom, planning their clandestine meetings, sharing their excitement and their guilt. They were in this together, the three of them united in their betrayal. I felt sick, physically ill. The world spun around me, the walls of our bedroom closing in. I stumbled to the bathroom, barely making it to the toilet before I vomited. The bile rose in my throat, a bitter taste of betrayal and disgust. I retched until there was nothing left, my body racked with sobs. I spent the rest of the night in a daze, staring at the ceiling, replaying the messages in my mind, each one a fresh wound to my soul. The anger was still there, a burning rage that threatened to consume me, but it was mixed with a profound sadness, a grief for the life I thought I had, for the love I thought we shared. The next morning, I woke up feeling hollowed out, emptied of everything but pain and resentment. I looked at Sarah sleeping beside me, her face peaceful and serene. How could she? How could they? The questions echoed in my mind, unanswered and unanswerable. I got out of bed, careful not to wake her, and went downstairs. I made coffee, the familiar routine a small anchor in the storm raging inside me. As I sat at the kitchen table, staring out at the garden where it had all begun, I knew I had a choice to make. I could confront them, scream and shout and demand answers, or I could do something else, something unexpected, something that would make them pay for what they had done. Cold, hard resolve settled over me. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing my pain. I would not let them break me. I would have my revenge. The initial rage subsided, leaving a chilling calm in its wake. Confrontation, a messy explosion of emotions, seemed too pedestrian, too predictable. They expected that, a scene, a cathartic release. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. My revenge would be different. It would be subtle, insidious, a poison that would seep into the foundations of their lives, slowly eroding their happiness, their relationships, their very sense of self. I started by observing them, truly observing them, with a detachment I hadn't known I possessed. I watched their interactions, the nuances of their body language, the subtle shifts in their tone of voice. I listened to their conversations, not just the words themselves, but the unspoken meanings hidden between the lines. I learned their weaknesses, their insecurities, the cracks in their carefully constructed facades. Tom, for all his outward confidence, was deeply insecure about his career. He craved recognition, validation, a constant affirmation of his worth. Emily, despite her bubbly personality, harbored a deep-seated fear of abandonment, a fear rooted in her childhood. And Sarah, my Sarah, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, was driven by a need for approval, a desire to be loved and admired by everyone. I began to formulate a plan, a meticulously crafted strategy designed to exploit their vulnerabilities, to turn their strengths against them. It wouldn't be a quick, explosive act of vengeance. It would be a slow burn, a carefully orchestrated campaign of psychological manipulation that would leave them questioning their own sanity. I would start with Sarah. I would isolate her, subtly undermining her relationships with Tom and Emily. I would plant seeds of doubt, whisper suggestions of infidelity, play on their insecurities. I would make them question each other's loyalty, turn them against each other. Then I would move on to Tom and Emily. I would use their own secrets against them, expose their hidden vulnerabilities to the world. I would destroy their reputations, their careers, their carefully cultivated images. I knew it wouldn't be easy. It would require patience, cunning, and a ruthlessness I didn't know I possessed. But I was determined. They had taken everything from me, my wife, my friends, my sense of security, my belief in the world. Now it was my turn to take something from them. I would take their happiness, their peace of mind, their very sense of reality. I would make them pay for what they had done, slowly, agonizingly, until they were left with nothing but the ashes of their shattered lives. The first step was the hardest. To enact my revenge, I needed to maintain a facade of normalcy, to lull them into a false sense of security. I had to become an actor, playing the role of the oblivious husband, the trusting friend. It was a role that went against every fiber of my being, but I embraced it with a chilling determination. I started by withdrawing, subtly distancing myself from Sarah and our friends. I worked late, claiming increased pressure at the office. I feigned exhaustion, opting for quiet evenings at home instead of our usual social gatherings. I became less attentive, less engaged in conversations, my mind always preoccupied with the intricate details of my plan. Sarah noticed the change, of course. She questioned me, her voice laced with concern, but I brushed it off, attributing it to stress and fatigue. She seemed relieved, perhaps even a little guilty, as if my withdrawal gave her more freedom to pursue her affair. I watched them closely, observing their interactions with a newfound clarity. I saw the way Sarah's eyes lit up when Tom entered the room, the way she leaned in a little too close when they were talking. I saw the way Tom's hand lingered on her arm, the way he looked at her when he thought no one was watching. And I saw the way Emily facilitated their trysts, providing cover, creating opportunities for them to be alone. I began to plant seeds of doubt, subtle suggestions that would take root in their minds and grow into suspicion and mistrust. I would casually mention seeing Tom with another woman, a colleague perhaps, or an old friend. I would drop hints about Emily's past relationships, suggesting a pattern of infidelity. I would weave a web of half-truths and innuendos, designed to create cracks in their carefully constructed facade of happiness. It was a delicate dance, requiring a careful balance of manipulation and deception. I had to be subtle to avoid arousing suspicion, but I also had to be persistent to ensure that the seeds of doubt took root and flourished. With each passing day, I felt a growing sense of control. I was no longer the victim, the betrayed husband. I was the puppet master, pulling the strings, orchestrating their downfall. The pain of betrayal was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but it was overshadowed by a cold, calculating determination. I would have my revenge, and it would be exquisite. As weeks turned into months, my plan began to take shape. I continued to play the role of the oblivious husband, maintaining a facade of normalcy while secretly manipulating the events unfolding around me. I became a master of deception, a puppeteer pulling the strings of their lives. I subtly encouraged Sarah's dependence on Tom and Emily, fostering a sense of isolation from me. I would accidentally schedule work dinners on nights they had plans, forcing her to rely on them for companionship. I would feign disinterest in her hobbies and passions, pushing her further into their orbit. Simultaneously, I nurtured their individual insecurities. With Tom, I played on his ambition, feeding his ego with subtle praise while subtly undermining his confidence in his abilities. I would casually mention other colleagues' achievements, making him question his own success. With Emily, I exploited her fear of abandonment, hinting at Tom's wandering eye, suggesting that he was growing tired of their relationship. I used social gatherings to my advantage, orchestrating situations that would expose their vulnerabilities. I would steer conversations towards topics that I knew would trigger their insecurities, watching as their carefully constructed masks began to slip. I would subtly encourage competition between them, creating a sense of rivalry that would further erode their trust in each other. My manipulations were subtle, almost invisible to the untrained eye, but I saw the effects, the growing tension between them, the flicker of doubt in their eyes. Their laughter became less frequent, their smiles less genuine. The easy camaraderie they once shared was replaced by a strained politeness, a fragile facade masking the growing cracks in their relationships. I reveled in their discomfort, my own pain momentarily forgotten in the satisfaction of seeing my plan unfold. It was a twisted game, a dangerous dance on the precipice of destruction, but I was in control. I was the architect of their downfall, the author of their misery. And as I watched them unravel, I felt a chilling sense of power, a dark satisfaction that fueled my desire for revenge. The next phase of my plan was the most audacious, the most risky. It was time to escalate the game, to move beyond subtle manipulations and into the realm of public perception. I would dismantle their reputations, piece by piece, carefully and methodically, until they were left with nothing but the ashes of their former selves. I started with Sarah. She was the foundation of their little trio, the glue that held them together. If I could break her, the others would crumble. I began by subtly undermining her credibility at work. I would accidentally forward emails containing minor errors, highlighting her mistakes to colleagues. I would subtly question her judgment in meetings, planting seeds of doubt about her competence. Outside of work, I targeted her social standing. I spread rumors, carefully crafted whispers designed to exploit her insecurities and play on the prejudices of our social circle. I hinted at financial difficulties, suggesting that she was living beyond her means. I insinuated that she was neglecting her duties as a wife and a friend, prioritizing her own desires over the needs of others. The rumors spread like wildfire, fueled by gossip and innuendo. Sarah's once impeccable reputation began to tarnish, her social circle shrinking as people distanced themselves from the perceived drama. She became withdrawn, her confidence shaken, her usual vibrancy replaced by a quiet anxiety. I watched her unravel with a mixture of satisfaction and guilt. It was difficult to see the woman I loved, the woman I had built a life with, crumble under the weight of my manipulations. But the pain of betrayal was still raw, a constant reminder of the injustice I had suffered. And so, I pressed on, my resolve hardened by the sight of her suffering. The effects of my campaign were not limited to Sarah. Tom and Emily were also affected, their own reputations tarnished by association. They became more guarded, more suspicious of each other, their once close friendships strained by the growing tension. I had set the wheels in motion, and now the machine of destruction was gathering momentum. There was no turning back. I was committed to my course, driven by a thirst for revenge that consumed me entirely. With Sarah's reputation in tatters, I turned my attention to Tom and Emily. Their affair, once a source of excitement and passion, had become a burden, a source of guilt and anxiety. The cracks in their relationship were widening, their trust in each other eroded by my subtle manipulations. I exploited their vulnerabilities, playing on their fears and insecurities. Tom, desperate for validation, was easily manipulated by flattery and praise. I would subtly encourage his ambition, feeding his ego while subtly undermining his confidence in his abilities. I would hint at opportunities for advancement, dangling the carrot of success just out of reach, making him question his loyalty to his current employer. Emily, on the other hand, was driven by a deep-seated fear of abandonment. I played on this fear, subtly suggesting that Tom was growing tired of their relationship, that he was looking for a way out. I would drop hints about his past relationships, painting him as a serial philanderer, incapable of commitment. I also used their shared secret against them, creating a wedge between them. I would subtly suggest that one was confiding in me about the other, creating a sense of paranoia and mistrust. I would hint at betrayals, real or imagined, fueling their suspicion and jealousy. The once solid foundation of their relationship began to crumble under the weight of my manipulations. Their conversations became strained, their laughter forced. The intimacy they once shared was replaced by a cold distance, a growing chasm of suspicion and resentment. I watched their demise with a chilling detachment, my own pain momentarily forgotten in the satisfaction of seeing my plan unfold. Their suffering was a balm to my wounded soul, a twisted form of justice for the betrayal I had endured. But even as I reveled in their downfall, a part of me felt a pang of regret. These were people I had once considered friends, people I had shared meals with, laughed with, confided in. Now they were nothing more than pawns in my game of revenge, their lives shattered by my manipulations. The guilt was fleeting, however, quickly overshadowed by the consuming desire for retribution. I had come too far to turn back now. I would see this through to the end, no matter the cost. The final act of my revenge was the most devastating, the most cruel. I had destroyed their reputations, poisoned their relationships, and shattered their sense of self-worth. Now, it was time to expose their deceit to the world, to strip them bare and leave them vulnerable to the judgment of their peers. I orchestrated a series of events, carefully planned and executed, designed to reveal their affair in the most public and humiliating way possible. I leaked information to their colleagues, their friends, their families. I planted evidence, forged documents, and manipulated situations to create a damning narrative of their betrayal. The truth came out in a torrent of accusations, whispers, and shocked expressions. Sarah's colleagues ostracized her, her friends abandoned her, and her family turned their backs on her. Tom's career imploded, his reputation in ruins. Emily, faced with the scorn of her social circle, retreated into isolation, her once bubbly personality extinguished. Their carefully constructed world, the world they had built on lies and deceit, crumbled around them. They were left with nothing but the wreckage of their shattered lives, the consequences of their actions laid bare for all to see. I watched their downfall from a distance, a silent observer of the chaos I had created. There was a sense of satisfaction, a grim sense of justice, but it was tinged with a profound sadness. These were people I had once cared about, people I had shared my life with. Now they were strangers, their lives irrevocably damaged by my actions. The revenge I had craved for so long had come at a cost. I had destroyed them, but in doing so, I had also destroyed a part of myself. The pain of betrayal was still there, a dull ache in my heart, but it was accompanied by a new kind of pain, the pain of regret, the pain of knowing that I had become the very thing I despised. The fallout was swift and brutal. Sarah, once the darling of our social circle, became a pariah. Whispers followed her wherever she went, her reputation irreparably tarnished. Her colleagues avoided her, her friends shunned her, and her family, once a source of unwavering support, turned their backs on her in disgust. Tom's career, which he had built with such meticulous care, imploded. The rumors of his infidelity spread like wildfire, reaching the ears of his superiors and clients. He was passed over for promotions, his projects were reassigned, and his once bright future dimmed into a bleak uncertainty. The respect he had craved, the validation he had sought, evaporated, leaving him with nothing but the bitter taste of regret. Emily, the once vivacious social butterfly, retreated into isolation. The friends she had relied on, the social circle she had thrived in, turned against her, their laughter and camaraderie replaced by judgment and scorn. Her once vibrant life dwindled into a lonely existence, her days filled with self-recrimination and despair. The community, once a haven of shared values and close-knit relationships, was fractured. Trust was broken, friendships shattered, and the sense of belonging that had once defined their lives was replaced by suspicion and animosity. The idyllic facade of suburban bliss had been ripped away, revealing the ugly reality of betrayal and deceit. I watched the consequences of my actions unfold with a mixture of satisfaction and horror. The pain of betrayal was still raw, a constant reminder of the injustice I had suffered. But the sight of their suffering, the devastation I had wrought, filled me with a growing sense of unease. Had I gone too far? Had my thirst for revenge blinded me to the consequences of my actions? The questions gnawed at me, their answers elusive and unsettling. I had achieved my goal, but the victory felt hollow, the satisfaction tainted by a growing sense of guilt and regret. The whispers and the stares followed them everywhere. Sarah, once so confident and poised, now walked with her head bowed, her eyes avoiding contact. The vibrant spark that had once defined her was extinguished, replaced by a dullness that reflected the emptiness within. She had lost her friends, her family, her career, and her dignity. All that remained was the hollow shell of the woman I had once loved. Tom, stripped of his professional achievements and social standing, became a shadow of his former self. The arrogance that had once been his defining characteristic was replaced by a quiet desperation, a frantic search for redemption that seemed forever out of reach. He haunted the bars and restaurants we used to frequent, a lonely figure seeking solace in the bottom of a glass. Emily, once the life of the party, disappeared from our social circle altogether. The laughter that had once filled our gatherings was replaced by an eerie silence, a constant reminder of her absence. Rumors circulated about her whereabouts, whispers of breakdowns and therapy sessions, but no one knew for sure what had become of her. The community, once a tight-knit tapestry of interconnected lives, was irrevocably damaged. The betrayal had exposed the fragility of their relationships, the shallowness of their friendships. Trust was shattered, replaced by suspicion and doubt. The idyllic facade of suburban harmony had been stripped away, revealing the raw, unvarnished truth of human nature. I watched the aftermath of my revenge with a growing sense of detachment. The satisfaction I had initially felt was replaced by a numbing emptiness, a void that could not be filled by the suffering of others. The pain of betrayal was still there, a constant throb in my heart, but it was overshadowed by a profound sense of loss. I had destroyed them, but in doing so, I had also destroyed a part of myself. The world I had known, the world I had believed in, was gone, replaced by a bleak landscape of broken trust and shattered dreams. And in the midst of this desolation, I stood alone, a solitary figure haunted by the ghosts of my past. The days that followed were a blur of emptiness. I went through the motions of my life, working, eating, sleeping, but it was all a facade, a performance for an audience that no longer existed. The house, once filled with laughter and the warmth of shared moments, was now a silent tomb, echoing with the ghosts of the past. I wandered through the empty rooms, touching the furniture, the walls, the objects that held the memories of a life that was no more. The garden, once a source of joy and shared moments, was now overgrown and neglected, a reflection of the desolation within me. I tried to find solace in work, burying myself in projects, seeking distraction in the demands of my career. But the emptiness followed me, seeping into every corner of my life, poisoning every thought and action. I tried to reach out to other friends, to rebuild the social connections that had been shattered by my revenge. But the shadow of betrayal lingered, casting a pall over every interaction. Trust was gone, replaced by a wary suspicion, a fear of being hurt again. Evenings were the worst. The silence of the house was deafening, amplifying the loneliness that gnawed at me. I would sit in the living room, staring at the empty chair where Sarah used to sit, her laughter echoing in the silence. The memories, once a source of comfort, now tormented me, a constant reminder of what I had lost. Sleep offered no escape. Nightmares plagued me, visions of Sarah, Tom, and Emily, their faces contorted in pain and accusation. I would wake up in a cold sweat, the echoes of their suffering ringing in my ears. The revenge I had craved, the justice I had sought, had come at a terrible price. I had destroyed them, but in doing so, I had also destroyed myself. The emptiness within me was a constant companion, a reminder of the irrevocable consequences of my actions. The world moved on, oblivious to the wreckage I had created. Sarah, Tom, and Emily faded from public consciousness, their names whispered only in hushed tones, their stories cautionary tales of betrayal and revenge. Sarah, I heard, had left the city, seeking a fresh start in a place where her past wouldn't haunt her. Some said she had moved to a small town, taking a menial job, living a quiet, anonymous life. Others claimed she had gone abroad, seeking to escape the memories that clung to her like a shroud. Tom, his career in ruins, had also disappeared. Some said he had succumbed to his demons, his life spiraling into addiction and despair. Others whispered that he had found a new path, a chance to redeem himself, but the details were always vague, shrouded in uncertainty. Emily, the once vibrant social butterfly, remained a recluse. Her friends, the ones who hadn't completely abandoned her, spoke of a woman broken by guilt and regret, her spirit crushed by the weight of her actions. She had become a ghost, a shadow of her former self, haunting the edges of our memories. The community, though scarred by the events, gradually healed. New friendships formed, new relationships blossomed, and the wounds of betrayal slowly began to scab over. But the scars remained, a reminder of the fragility of trust, the devastating consequences of deceit. I watched the world move on from a distance, a detached observer of a life I no longer felt a part of. The emptiness within me remained, a constant companion, a testament to the irrevocable nature of my actions. I had achieved my revenge, but the victory was Pyrrhic, the cost far greater than I had ever imagined. I found myself drawn to the places we used to frequent, the restaurants, the bars, the parks where we had shared so many moments, both joyful and mundane. I would sit in a corner booth at our favorite cafe, nursing a cup of coffee, watching the people come and go, their lives unfolding around me like a play in which I was no longer a participant. Sometimes, I would catch a glimpse of someone who resembled Sarah, a flash of blonde hair, a familiar gait, a fleeting smile that mirrored the one that had once captivated me. My heart would skip a beat, a surge of hope and despair coursing through me, before I realized it was just a stranger, a phantom conjured by my own longing. I would walk through the park where we had our first picnic, the memory of her laughter echoing in the silence. I would sit on the bench where we had shared our first kiss, the ghost of her touch lingering on my skin. The past was a living presence, a constant reminder of what I had lost. The faces of Tom and Emily also haunted me, their expressions a mixture of pain, betrayal, and accusation. I would see them in the faces of strangers, in the crowds on the street, in the shadows that danced in the corners of my vision. Their suffering was a mirror, reflecting my own. I had inflicted pain on them, but in doing so, I had also inflicted pain on myself. The wounds I had inflicted on them were also wounds I had inflicted on myself. We were bound together by the threads of betrayal and revenge, our lives forever intertwined in a tapestry of pain and loss. The realization was a bitter pill to swallow. I had sought to isolate them, to punish them for their actions, but in doing so, I had also isolated myself, condemned myself to a life of solitude and regret. The revenge I had craved had become a prison, its walls closing in on me, suffocating me with its emptiness.